Okay, my friends, it's time for them shout outs, man. Who is your favorite teenager that's just like
Wow, your
killing it
favorite-
right now?
Favorite's
teenager.
crazy.
That's a big
Favorite.
statement.
That's a lot.
huge. How about
Who's one of your favorite
Okay,
teenagers
sorry.
that's just like going full on disciple beast mode, like they're just inspiring you right now?
Oh.
I'll start. Mine is T Money, Tori
Kelly?
Barrett. Tori Kelly's crazy, but yeah, Tori Barrett, man, she's one of my favorites. I never even had her in class. She's just hanging around the seminary, and she's just high level, man. She's a leader, and she's part of the seminary council, and she's just awesome, and she hypes me up about the podcast. So, shout out Tori T Money.
Let's go. Let's go.
Mine's Grayson. She just got her mission call. Provo, Salt Lake, somewhere in Utah. ASL.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy with what you talked
Yeah.
about in the last.
I know, she sent that to me. Anyway, she's an angel and she's literally the coolest person ever and she's going to be the best missionary ever. And it was so precious watching her open her call and just watching her like go through the experience
Mission
of
call
getting her
openings are
call.
the best.
Yeah, like watching her go from like deciding to go on a mission, doing her papers, like every time I talk to her, it inspired me. I just love her. She's an angel.
Oh. Well, this is kind of cute. Someone who just got their mission call, someone who is just vibing. Wait, what? I want to shout out Kira Shammy. She is on her mission right
We
now.
love Kira.
And she is amazing.
Kira.
And she is killing it. She went to Kenya with me for an HXP trip. And she just does nothing but preach Jesus. Like that is
So
her
true.
whole life.
Saturday night Bible study
Exactly.
on IG Live.
Like so
It's crazy.
cool. I look up to her a lot.
Mine's my boy Hunter Wells. She came out to Texas with us. The man.
Do I know Hunter?
Yeah, you do. You drove home with him.
I love him.
The man is just set on becoming the best version of himself right now. Like, he's doing everything he can to improve and grow and overcome, and he is. I'm watching
And
him
his
change
story,
and grow.
He is
Oh, gold.
unreal.
He's gold.
He's
Love you,
gold.
Hunter. Love
He's
you, man.
gold. Welcome to This is Kingdom, a Good News Brand podcast. This is Grace.
This is Talon.
This is TJ.
This is Hollis. And this week, my friends, we are going over the talk, This is My Gospel, This is My Church by Elder Dale G. Renlund.
There is an experience that I've been thinking about a lot. It's on my mission. I think the reason I've been thinking about it so much is because I've been thinking about all mission things because of A Marvelous Work, our mission prep book. And it's just got me having so many flashbacks. And it's made me just so hyped about missionary work again. It's brought me back to that space, which I've been so grateful for this book. And I remember this experience that I had in Chosmalal. It's this place that, to understand it, the closest city that has a church in it is 150 miles away. You go to that city that has a church in it, you drive 150 miles into the mountains, and it's just this little town. There's a ton of sheep herders. You'll walk down a main street and there will be hundreds of sheep just walking down the street. And it is such a beautiful place. I love, love, love this place. And the reason I started thinking of this place is because in this talk, Elder Renlund talks about the gospel and the church, and he talks about how both are important. And it made me think that sometimes you don't appreciate certain things until you see what it's like without them. And I really got to see that in this area on my mission, because the church started up 6 weeks before I got there. And they were meeting in a barn. And it was probably my favorite church ever, because you would be in church and you'd have a horse just walking right around by you. And for sacrament, we just had one plate with 3 cups on it that we'd all drink out of. And there was a family, a couple of missionaries, and that was it at the beginning. And then little by little, we started finding more and more members that were living out in these mountains, just way out there, that had been members for years, but hadn't had the church around them for so long. And there was this one guy named Angel that I love. This man. This man is my brother. And he found us missionaries there. And he's like, I knew the church would be here. I knew the church would come here. And he came for the first time. And I don't think I've ever seen someone so excited to be at church. And church for us, it wasn't a fancy building. It really was a barn, and it was cold. It just was so simple. But all of a sudden, this man got so excited that he had people to gather with. He had people that could strengthen his faith. He had people that could lift him. He had other people's testimonies that could inspire him. He got so excited because he had a set way every week now to remember Christ and to think of him. He had a way to partake of his bread, to remember the covenants that he'd made with him. And he had a way that he could start teaching and he could start sharing and he could share the things that he'd learned. And I don't think I've ever seen someone be so excited about church as this man. And I think it's because he went years where it wasn't an option. It just wasn't there. It wasn't available. And I remember him telling us, elders, I've been praying and praying and praying that the church would come out here. I knew it would. This is the best thing ever. And it made me realize that this church community that we have might be one of the things that we most take for granted. And because it's something we go to every week, because it's something we're around so much, we're like, yeah, it's church. But I really hope we don't forget what a blessing it is to be surrounded by people that can strengthen us. I really hope we don't forget what a blessing it is to have a set place to remember Jesus every week. I really hope we don't forget what a blessing it is to have a place where we can go serve and teach and give our hearts to people and strengthen them. The church is such a blessing, and I think we forget that way too often.
I was talking to Lo about church on the way to church a couple days ago. And this came up because we were talking about, because Lo's been in the primary for a while, and she's like, and now she's in the presidency, and so they just like hang out and sharing time the whole time. And we were just talking about how sometimes it's tough to go to church and be like kind of be spiritually nourished by like lessons, you know, for whatever reason. But it kind of opened our eyes to like, man, maybe a couple of the biggest reasons that we go to church is not just to be like spiritually nourished by the lessons, but we need the lessons and they're so good. And shout out to all the Sunday school teachers and everything. But those two things, man, connecting with Jesus through the sacrament, he's been emphasizing sacrament so much. It's just jumped out on the page from 3rd Nephi, where he's shown up in the Americas. Just so much sacrament, experiencing his grace and connection with him and walking with him through renewing those covenants. But then too, the gathering, just like connecting with people through callings and through ministering. Some of my best friends right now are in church. And so I'm just such a big believer of those two things right now, of church, that just you can get that connection with Jesus and get that community, that connection, that friendship with people.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm just so proud to just be a member of the church. I was reflecting back this past week, actually, of all the good things in my life. I actually made a list of just all the good things happening in my life right now. And I could go to every single one of those good things and trace it back to being a member of this church. I could trace it back to me being baptized and me becoming a member of this church. And the ripple effect it sent when I decided to be baptized to where my life is now is crazy. It's insane how many things make me happy and I label as something good to me that come from this church. And I know, and my heart goes out to a lot of people who have experienced also pain and confusion in this church too. And I know those experiences are very valid. And I am also grateful that this church has the gospel of Jesus Christ, where we can turn to him, repent, and become better. I love in this talk where Elder Renlund talks about the church and the gospel, and how the church is not a lot. It's actually very normal and ordinary without the gospel of Jesus Christ infused in it. And I'm grateful that that gospel and that driving force and that power of Jesus Christ is in this church, because that's the driving force that keeps it going. It's the atonement of Christ that heals us and reminds us why we are members of this church.
It's so interesting because this past week I was on a road trip with some of my very best friends. And for some reason, what kept coming up like over and over and over was this conversation of, why do we need the church and the gospel? Why can't we just live the gospel without the church? And why can't we just believe in Jesus and be so engaged in our testimony without the church? Like, why do we in our lives need the church? And it's funny because we talked about it for a long time, over and over and over within the past few days. But when Talon was kind of sharing that story, I was reminded of an experience I had in a little town called Bethlehem. You might have heard of it because of Jesus. But I got to experience Bethlehem in my life, and we ended up going to church there in Bethlehem, and it was in a tiny basement of a building. And we walked in, and there was like 8 chairs set up, And they were like, yeah, it's just not very big here. Like our church is really small. And everyone started coming, all of these members. And the whole time they kept referencing this girl and they were like, she's not here yet. She's not at church yet. She's not at church yet. And I was kind of like, yeah, I was like, some people miss church sometimes. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And they're like, no, like, I wonder where she is. Like, I wonder what's happening. And then the meeting started and it started a little bit late and everyone was like kind of flustered that this girl wasn't there yet. And they were like, she's our greeter. Like, she's the greeter for church. Like, she should be here. And like, I kind of was like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I was like, it's okay. And so church started and it was like everyone started going and it was the tiniest church I've ever been in. And you could count the members on my two hands. Like, it was such a small church. And we started, and then all of a sudden, probably 15 minutes into church, we hear like the front door open, and this girl who is probably 13 just comes running in. And church was going. Like the conductor was like conducting the meeting from the front of the church. And she goes up to every single person in that church and gives them a hug and says, welcome to church. Every single person in the middle of the meeting. Like it did not matter. It was the bishop. She said, hello, I'm so thankful to be at church. Like, how are you? Like, welcome to church. Every single person in that building. And sitting here right now, I'm thinking about it. And that girl didn't just live the gospel, but she was a proud member of the church. And she cherished both. And her showing up that day showed me what it looks like to not just love the gospel, but to love the church as well. And she showed me by loving God, but also loving his people and realizing that church is the people she's surrounded by. Church is how she showed up every single Sunday. And it just like made me think in my head, like, I do a really good job of loving the gospel and talking about how much I love the gospel, but I want to love the church just as much. I want to be just as proud to be a member of the church as I am to say that I believe in Jesus Christ. Those two things, I love both of them. And I want to show that and I want to share that. And I want my experience on Sunday and on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to reflect the fact that I need both in my life and I love both.
So good.
Gosh, it just, I know that it could be taken to the extreme, but I'm just like, what if it was our goal to show up to church like this girl? Like, what if we're going to church and we're just like lighting people up, man? Like, we're just giving people hugs. We're just like hyped to see people so that, and again, this is not our main purpose there, but what if we did that in such a way and we showed up and we're being nice and we're talking to people and saying hi and hyping people up and asking people how their lives are, is that when we're not there, they're like, man, where they at?
Yeah.
Where are they at today? And I just feel like I love Elder Renlund. He uses this analogy of dynamite, right? Where I don't even remember the different compounds and stuff, but he's saying like when the gospel of Jesus Christ and the church come together, it's like dynamite. And I was like, man, that's such a cool analogy. But now I'm just thinking like when you show up to church with that dynamite energy, you know what I'm saying? When you're striving to live the gospel and you're showing up to church to like love on people and to be there and to listen and to talk to people in the hallway, and because I'm so guilty of doing the opposite. And I don't know why, but maybe someone could resonate with this, but it's usually when I don't have like a calling. You know what I'm saying? Like it's usually when I think like, oh, I'm gonna just kind of show up to church because I'm not really expected to do anything. I'm just kind of hang out in the back and I'm just gonna chill. And is God happy that I'm there? Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Is the church experience gonna be so much more high level if I go and I'm lighting people up and I'm trying to experience that dynamite? Like, heck yeah. And so I'm just inspired by this girl. I want to do that.
We all gonna be like that girl now.
Well, there's some lines in the talk. It mentions price. And so I just thought Hollis would like this one.
Connor?
Close. And now I live my life in a way that shows I'm thankful. But some days I'm Cain and there's other days I'm Abel. The enemy reminds me of the times I'm unstable and how my flaws can never let me sit at your table. Been sick to my stomach in a prison of regret. Felt so full of shame that I wish that I was dead. Till I realized that somebody paid the price. The gift was free from me, but he had to give his life. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. He gave it all, Even his life, I could never be worthy of the price, never be worthy of the price. Crown on his head, love in his eyes. He says I'm worthy of the price. He says I'm worthy of the price.
See you next week.